Okay, as you guys read over the death penalty cases or articles in this book, just a few things to keep in mind. Poyman, of course, is defending the death penalty on page 203. He argues a few things about the death penalty. One, his basic premise is that the death penalty is not used enough. He says that the death penalty is both retributive and it is a deterrent to would-be criminals. So retribution, right, is the idea that it's just desert. So not vengeance necessarily on the person who murdered somebody, but it's justice being served. So if you kill somebody, you should be killed. Retribution. Um, I don't know if retribution is the way to treat criminals. To a degree, this makes sense, right? Like if you rob somebody, you should have to pay them back or give them back what you took from them. In many instances, I think retribution could be good, but when it comes to violent crimes, there's some sticky situations, right? So if somebody kills someone, do they necessarily deserve to be killed? It might depend on the instance or the situation in which they killed somebody. And then, do we think that people who torture people should be tortured? Perhaps. Do you think people who are rapists should be raped? God, well, who is going to carry through with these kinds of things? So retribution is good in some instances. Specifically, I think theft is a good area in which retribution should be good. Right? You steal from somebody, you have to pay them back all the money you took or the worth of whatever you took from them. But in other instances, I don't know. His second argument, of course, is deterrence on page 205. He says that the death penalty deters would-be murderers. I don't know if that is necessarily true or not. That would be based on the premise that most people don't commit murder because they're afraid of going or they're afraid of going to jail or being put to death for murdering. Is that really what keeps us from murdering? That's what keeps me from robbing Walmart, sure, right? I don't want to be punished for it. But knowing that I could get the death penalty for murdering someone is not what keeps me from murdering people. I just don't want to murder anybody. So does deterrence really stop people? In many instances, like when it's a crime of passion, right? Someone gets pissed off and kills somebody else. They're not necessarily thinking, I could get the death penalty for this. But he gives an example that if everybody automatically got the death penalty for killing somebody, then that would be more of a deterrent. And I can't argue with that. That probably would be more of a deterrent, but would it actually lower the death, would it actually lower capital murders? I don't know if that's true or not, but so those are his arguments. And then Stephen B. Wright writes about why the United States will join the rest of the world in abandoning capital punishment. So he talks about how it makes us look bad. The top executioners in the world in 2007 were China, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and the United States. So we're in bad company when we employ the death penalty. It makes us look like assholes, basically. We look as though we are bullies trying to pick on people, I guess is a good way of looking at it. Then he also goes on to talk about how it is discriminatory. Really, you only get the death penalty if you murder certain people, right? So if you murder people who society thinks of as valuable people, and then also if you murder people in certain states, Texas and Virginia carried out most executions, right? So in some states, you will never get the death penalty, and then in others you will. So he's just saying that it's unfairly given to people, right? And it's kind of unsettling to think that determining who you kill will decrease or increase your chance of going to prison and being put on death row. So let's say that I kill a homeless person or a person of color. I'm not nearly as likely to be put on death row as if I kill an affluent white person. So that's very problematic, right? That shows that there's something wrong with the system. Poyman would argue that just because that is true, that means there's something wrong with the system. That doesn't mean the death penalty should be done away with. But on the other hand, Stephen Bright thinks that that makes us look bad. So if we can't be fair in doing something, we should not do it. So if we cannot fairly sentence people to death, we definitely shouldn't be sentencing people to death. And then he also brings up that on occasion we are wrong, right? So sometimes we give people the death penalty for things that they didn't do. Maybe this isn't a typical thing that happens, but the idea that it happens at all is awful and shouldn't be allowed. If we accidentally kill an innocent person, what does that say about our judicial system? What does that say about capital punishment in the United States? That we're okay with occasionally killing an innocent person. He thinks that that's problematic. Anyways, he talks about the role of racial bias, the problem with prosecutors, then innocent people condemned to death. So look over it and consider pros and cons of the death penalty. If you have any questions, let me know.